All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Joe Giordano, and I'm the Assistant General Manager for the ASM Global Managed BOK Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I also serve as the co-chair to the Young Professionals Committee as a part of the IEBA Board of Directors, and I'm very excited for the breakout session that we've assembled today, which sticks to a very common theme at this year's IEBA, and that is change and the future outlook of our business. Personally, I've been really fascinated with what we're going to focus on today, and that is new ventures, new business opportunity, how we've all tried to pivot throughout this. And we're going to get perspectives on how promoters, agencies, record labels, et cetera, have pivoted and what our panelists think those companies look like in a post-pandemic landscape. So I'm so excited to introduce our panelists, who many of you may already know or maybe have heard of through recent news stories. In some of the shifts that our industry has seen. But before I do, before I let them introduce themselves and what they've been up to for the past 6 months, I just want to make sure our viewers know that there's a chat feature at the bottom of the Zoom window, and you should feel free to put any questions into the panel. We'll try to do the quick Q&A at the end of our time, and please note that there's also closing remarks for IEBA, and that'll start at 4 p.m. Central after this session. And you'll have to go back to the main conference page on the IEBA website to view it. So without further ado, let's start with some introductions from all these awesome people on the screen here. I will note, Cole just told us we're the first panel who got the background right, so holla. And so I'd like to invite each of you to spend a couple of minutes about telling our viewers, about yourself, and maybe your new venture, initiative, company. So let's start with Annie. Why don't you start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Annie Flook. I currently run the touring and artist development department at Elektra Music Group. Our department typically is a liaison between the label and our agency and promoter partners when it comes to touring timeframes, pitching live opportunities, festival opportunities, everything on the live side for our artists. And we also set up promo on behalf of our roster and make sure that developing artists also are set up with, the tools they need to perform live, whether that means getting them set up with a band, rehearsals, music directors, production in some cases, all in those really, really early days when we first sign artists to the label and they don't really have that touring beneath them. And I come from the live side of the business. I got my start at ICM Talent before worked there for about 4.5 years in the contemporary music department before making the jump to the label side. And I've been running the department in Elektra for about 2 years now. And, in the last 6 months, we've seen everything from that complete pause when everything shut down at the beginning in March to really seeing our hungrier artists take advantage of a lot of new technologies. And now I think we're overwhelmed by the amount of live streaming going on and have really pivoted our department to look at live streaming and treat it like we did with touring and really rally all of our departments to help promote and market those opportunities for our artists and try not to look at it just a Band-Aid right now, and try to figure out how it's all going to tie into touring when touring does return, which I think is an ongoing conversation. We're not sure what that's going to look like. But we're constantly trying to look at that side and work with our teams, with our agent partners, with promoters, everyone that is working together right now, I think more than ever, to help our artists cut through the noise without touring.
Awesome, thank you. Sam?
Hi there. I'm Sam Schaumberg. I live in Nashville. I don't know if I'm the only Nashvilleian on the group, but I've worked in the Christian music industry for the last 10 years out of Nashville, including the last 6 years specifically at CAA. And myself and 2 of my colleagues from CAA launched a new agency 2 months ago, but just announced this week. So 2 months of planning before the announcement. Thank you. I love the Christian music industry. I think it's fabulous. I think it's got a lot of nuances on top of just the regular music industry, especially with touring. We have about 25 artists on our roster to start with. And I mean, every church in the country is hypothetically a venue with in-house sound and lights and guarantees and promoters and an audience to market to. So it's a very nuanced, very high volume sort of business. And it's been a lot of fun to try to figure out what that looks like with COVID. Thankfully, our artists have been at least busy enough to be on the road a little bit, but that's also because it is the Christian music industry. So there's a lot of, religious and worship exemptions from a lot of COVID rules and, socially distanced church gatherings and outdoor events and worship and stuff like that. So we've still been staying busy, but definitely trying to figure out what the new normal is going to look like for us. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you. And over to Eric with Nederlander.
Hey guys, I'm Eric. Apologize for being late. The truth is that Amy Davidman and I were having a secret business meeting we're actually in the process of, Nederlander's going to buy Live Nation and Amy's going to buy CAA. So stop the presses. I hope Dave Brooks is listening, but it's big news. So we're excited. In all seriousness, no, though, I'm happy to be with you guys at Nederlander. We're doing drive-in concerts, and we've been having some fun. It's a weird new normal, but we're making it work, and I'm happy to go into it in a little bit. But I've been at Nederlander for about 5 years. Before that, I was with Golden Voice for a lot of my career, with a small stint at the Belly Up. So that's it.
Awesome, thanks. And last but certainly not least, Amy.
Thanks, Eric, for the lightheartedness when we're all trying to connect here in the digital world. I am part of TBA Agency. I started it with 4 colleagues from Paradigm after we got laid off in March. Before that, I was with the Windish Agency and High Road Touring and the Bowery Ballroom and back. Yeah, I mean, right now we're 1 month old, so same boat as Sam here, and just kind of riding the high. I feel like the announcement of the agency really, I think symbolically, was very optimistic for a lot of people who are just feeling really down. At least that was the kind of the response that we got from the people who we've worked with for many years. And that kind of energy and response has been very uplifting. Of course, we all feel so excited to be off doing our own thing right now, and being open to all the possibilities of what this weird new normal future is. Yeah, I mean, we're doing drive-ins, we're doing the virtual stuff. We're listening to our clients, listening to, taking the temperature of the room in every room and city and county, and trying to figure out how to make connections between artists and fans and venues, and keep us all working.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for your intros, and I appreciate your time here on the panel today. And we've obviously have 2 agents on the panel, and I'm curious in an artist landscape, right, where you're starting a new venture, and I'm curious as to what that's been like for you guys as it pertains to business operations with your artists. Because I think, Amy, I saw something with TBA about, it never stops with the artists. Those are your clients, and you always want to be working as hard as you can for them. And we're all in an artist-centric business. We work for the artists, and that's the bottom line, right? What has it been like, on the artist side, as you guys have made your switch, and are they sharing the same optimism that you maybe have received, in the industry? I'll ask Sam and Amy that one.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of positivity anytime you get like literally a $500 virtual offer or like a 5,000, like every single offer now is a huge win, which is a blast. Even if we don't accept it, it's just like, great, someone has money again. This is fabulous.
Eric, I hope you're taking notes.
So that's been fun, like just having, I don't know, you kind of appreciate what we took for granted beforehand, right? And how much opportunity there used to be. So now whenever there is something that comes up, it's just a thrill ride. I think for us, because we had, I think, about 40 artists while we were at CAA and 7 people in our department. So to go down to 25 artists with 3 people felt like something we could manage and still deliver for all of those artists that did graciously want to come with us. And we're excited to still work with them. But at the same time, I mean, most of those artists, especially the most successful ones, have been on our roster and they've had careers for 20 years, right? Brian Myers, who was the head of the Christian music department at CA, was there for 22 years. And some of the clients that came with us were his clients 22 years ago. So there's also a level of, we're not constantly trying to make sure the artists still like us because they're family, right? And there's really deep relationships there and they know what the world looks like right now. So thankfully we're not living in fear of, oh gosh, is someone else going to try to deliver better than we can for these clients? Because they're much more like family and really close friendships. Which if that wasn't the case, I don't know how we'd be sleeping at night. So yeah, Amy, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've been really open in communication with our clients and transparency about what they need right now, and potentially how we fit into the picture and how can we help. And some artists need our help and others don't. Some have really huge management teams, label teams, all sorts of other people who are helping them, and they may not need anything from the agent side. There are other artists who don't have managers and really need to lean on us. So what we're trying to do is just stay on top of all the information that's out there, all the opportunities that are out there, figuring out who needs what from us and trying to just be open to those pivots, I guess. So, in some situations, they may need more information on all of the virtual streaming platforms out there. Now there's like 100 million thousand, as my 5-year-old would say. And I just, we take in all that information and then we still give our opinion back. So I think that our opinion still matters based on who our clients are. And then even moving into kind of long-term strategy that may not be in the touring world, which is, anything from brand deals, any digital deals, connecting with kind of a larger creative strategy that might involve some live shows. It also might involve a brand. It might involve, some sort of digital series or a website build out. I mean, there's just so many different pieces and every artist needs something different right now. So part of that has just been, how can we be transparent and really open with everyone? And, if there's kind of a weird non-traditional deal going on, like how can we just all be open to making it work for everyone without, everyone trying to like jump in and steal a piece of the pie, which I feel like has happened a lot in the past. And right now we're just, we're out here just like artists and venues and, trying to survive as a company. But we, we just want to be able to share the information that we get. We're spending all day, every day, connecting with who has all those opportunities out there. And so if we can connect those dots as much as possible, then everyone's happy. And some artists don't need that right now and they're in the studio and, they're doing their own thing and that's great too. But we want to have as much of that information as possible to share with them when they need it.
Sure, I love that. And I love the concept of, we're all in this together. And I think that has been very apparent, in our world, and even just the regular check-ins and support that we've received from a lot of agents, promoters. And again, it kind of goes back to what Sam was saying, that our industry is very relationship driven, but those relationships aren't always business related. You know, they are, you know, a lot of the people that I work with, I consider friends first, you know, and I think we can all resonate with that. Eric, you know, in your endeavors with the drive-ins, you know, have you had that same collaboration of, you know, transparent business ventures where you're seeing a lot of opportunity of, here's the pot, let's all figure out how to make it work? And yeah.
Totally. I mean, Amy and I have actually talked about this at length. It's not cheap to do the shows that we're doing. You know, it's like we can fit just under 300 cars, but it's like building out a small street festival. And so you have this great expense, and then there's just this tiny bit of money. Meanwhile, like none of us are really making any real money. We're losing money with the people that we've been fortunate to keep on at half salary, whatever it is, and no one's in the place to be able to take a hit. So there's absolutely a sense of partnership, understanding where, you know, none of us can afford to lose money right now. That's not what this is about. This is about getting the fans to be able to do something and getting the artists to be able to work and actually connect in a really tough time.
Awesome. And let's take that a step further and in focusing on what's next, right? We've seen kind of these, you know, these opportunities to try to engage some fans that still want to go and all that. What do you, and this can be for anybody, but what do you guys think 2020 will do to reshape the concert business? And that could be in the vein of, you know, an acceleration or adaptation, you know, that the touring business makes, whether it be virtual opportunity or certain technological changes. Are people really going to focus on the same level of production that maybe we did before right off the bat? It's kind of a general and broad question, but I'd be curious to hear from each of you on that.
I'll jump in on a little, you know, some of the conversations we've been having on our side and with our agency partners. I think, you know, what Amy said about it just all being a team effort right now, we're just all trying to figure it out together. And I think the label is in a unique position where we, you know, because we make most of our income on streaming, that we have been able to continue to invest in artist development and look at some of these, you know, live streams as marketing opportunities and help invest in them, because yeah, the artists can't take this risk on right now. We have Brandy Carlisle, who right at the beginning of the pandemic started doing live streams on Veep so that she could make sure she could pay her touring crew all year. And she made that very clear and part of the narrative. And she's been able to do that, but it's not like they're walking away with a huge payday at the end of the day. They're just trying to sustain. And I think when touring comes back, I think we're going to see, and I keep reading about that, the Swiss cheese type touring where artists are really only going to be able to do, you know, stuff regionally depending on what's opening up. The reduced capacities, you might see people paying more for more safe experience. I think you're going to see, I think promoters, it's been amazing, you know, Eric, that you guys are trying out the drive-ins. Like everyone's got to try something out and be willing to take on a little bit of that risk to see how people are going to want to come back. I don't know that we know until really there's a vaccine, really, that any of these shows can come back anywhere near, you know, how we all remember them being. So I think as much as we're seeing, you know, there's going to be a tentative stepping back into that place, I do think people are ready and willing as soon as they say it's safe to come back to the live space. And I don't know that live streaming is going to continue at the rate it's been at. I think it'll be a solution for your sold out show where you want people the 2 hours away, you couldn't come in for the show, to be able to tap in and watch the show. You know, some examples like that more so than, you know, it being this full solution that it is right now.
I was going to say, I think there's going to be a little bit more of a combo of live and virtual moving forward, even with conferences, galas, private parties. It just feels like, you know, people are seeing how easy it is for some folks to just come in remotely. And I think that that's going to start just to be a different, you know, tier of ticket or tier to enter a conference or something like that. whether it's because somebody just can't afford to go, or if they really feel, you know, like they're compromised on the health side of things. So I think that's gonna continue to be part of almost all events, that there's gonna be some sort of component that's always gonna be virtual. And I think that artists are also looking at that as just a new business venture. You know, what are they going to be offering digitally that they didn't offer before? You know, more artists are joining Patreon and, you know, getting fan clubs set up so that they can push out content and try to make a little bit of a living off of that. And then some artists who have always wanted to kind of go into whether it's like film, TV, virtual space, podcast space, you know, where they can push out some different content. I think that they're going to really embrace this as a moment to start doing that, and that will continue as just different content, not just virtual concerts, but, you know, more like their own kind of TV show or series.
Awesome. And I think, Annie, you touched on it a little bit earlier as far as discovery, right? And in the label world, we talked a little bit earlier, and how, I know you're not part of the A&R team, but how has artist discovery changed? And maybe Amy and Sam, you guys can also speak to this. Has it changed? Has it paused as far as development goes? But is TikTok here to stay? Well, what are the answers, I guess, right now for young up and coming artists that, you know, last year we just saw an artist like Billie Eilish explode on the scene, and all of a sudden she's selling out arenas, and probably more than that had the pandemic not happened. So, you know, I'm curious as to what your guys' perspectives are on, you know, the developmental side of our artists right now.
I think it's more difficult than ever. I would say, you know, and again, I'm speaking on behalf of the A&R team, but I know that our label prides ourselves on signing career-long artists who are incredible in their live performance. And part of my job is getting our newly signed artists on the label ready to perform live if they aren't quite there yet. So it's been an interesting time. I think our research team is busier than ever. They're really looking at what's going on in streaming, yes, what's going on TikTok, and kind of bringing those things up to the top so that our A&R folks can take a deeper dive, meet with those artists. And, you know, we're taking advantage of virtual meetings and bringing in artists to actually tonight at 5 have a showcase with an artist that's going to perform for a couple of us. And you kind of just have to glean as best as you can through the screen, you know, whether that artist has got it. And it's harder than ever, but some of them really have popped in those first meetings and are able to come across, you know, on a screen. And, you know, we just announced this past week the signing of Meet Me at the Altar, which is this really exciting new band out of Florida. These 3 young girls, probably, you know, our closest thing we have to a New World Paramore. And, you know, that's a band that when we all first met with them, they were able to achieve that. They were able to come straight through, but it is going to be more difficult for those artists that might be a little bit more introspective, a little bit, you know, you need to be in the room with them. So it's an interesting time. And as you were asking that question earlier, I was thinking about, we signed the band Camino last year based on their live show, based on our A&R guys going to the show, seeing them, seeing how the fans reacted, and really getting that energy off of that band. And that's really where they thrive. And, you know, that's not happening right now. So bands like that are, you know, needing to be discovered in that live space, you know, I think that things are going to be, they're a little bit slower for them, I guess.
Yeah, in my space, I think the Christian music industry is a little different in that our largest tours are more so brands than a headline artist. So like Winter Jam and Hits Deep, which is Toby Mac, so that is a headliner, or like Rock and Worship Roadshow. But historically, some of our largest tours and arenas in our space have been, you know, tours with 6 to 10 different artists on the lineup in one night, and a lot of developing bands with 15-minute sets with the lights up, or 20 minutes first with the lights down. Like, So I think our genre, just because of that, and there's fewer artists in general too, right? So it's easier to get on those tours if you're a developing artist once you have an agency, a manager, a label in place. But in the last probably 10 years or so, as those tours have ramped up, that's kind of been the go-to launch pad for a developing artist, right? Is to get in front of 5,000, 10,000 people a night, gradually build your fan base just from touring on massive package tour deals. And those artists are spoiled. I mean, for your first, it's almost more common than not for an artist in the Christian music space's first tour to have a bus and to like actually instead of a Sprinter van, like that's kind of the norm because it's these huge massive tours that travel with 16, 20 buses and 4 trucks on top of that. So they get used to a live show with a huge production value as well. And they're really spoiled in that space, which is great because it's a little easier to launch an artist and break through the noise. But with that gone, it's been really fun to see the Christian music artists and the label side as well, and their perspective of, great, now we need to launch them online. It needs to be fully online. It needs to be across every platform online. It needs to be a very specific brand because everyone's posting, everyone's on TikTok. Like, it's harder to break through the noise online, but our artists are getting more creative of how to do that. And in the past, when it used to be fully touring, like, once you get in front of Toby Mac's fans, you're immediately they're your fan as well. And then at the end of the tour, there's your fan base. Without that crutch, not that it's a crutch, it's a good thing, but it's a good crutch. Those artists are now developing their own, and that's not just online. That's also writing better music, recording better songs, increasing the volume of everything that they're working on at the very least. So that part of developing has been a lot of fun to see. And it's kind of fun just in COVID months to look at, how many followers did you have online beforehand and what are you at today? And we couldn't have predicted that you'd be that successful for a lot of those developing bands. So.
I was gonna say, I don't think anything on our end has slowed down. I mean, we still, we still hear from our label friends and our management friends and our promoter friends about, what they're hearing and who told them about what. And I don't know, it still feels like the same old. And I don't know that I would expect anybody to perform for me virtually just as a signing. I mean, I definitely have to hear the songs and be in it with the songs. But I think, what's more exciting these days is knowing that there's a team or an artist who's at least involved in or interested in kind of a longer runway here. And like I said, being a little bit more open to look at not just the touring space, but everything around that and how do all those things come together, package together to drive a career forward. So I think, we're just trying to be a little bit more open to what that looks like right now. And hopefully then just be able to have a little extra time so that when we're ready to book an actual live tour, we're ready to go.
Well, I can tell you
that's been kind of, I was going to say something that's been interesting with our developing artists I was talking about the signing process, but the ones that we have signed in this past year, just this past week, we did a virtual showcase featuring 4 of them. And rather than, what the labels typically do, we do like the Mercury Lounge show and invite all the partners out. And, it's the kind of the same old, and, you get to experience the artist live, and typically maybe it'll just be that one artist. It was interesting to take 4 different artists and, we pre-recorded it. We filmed 4 different bespoke performances that felt really, branded to who that artist was, let alone that the artists were all over the world. So we had to do it that way and presented them all together in this one package. And so let alone we didn't have to fly them all in, deal with backline, deal with guest list, all the mess that kind of goes, there's a silver lining into doing it this way. And something that we might consider moving forward if we, one of the artists was out of India and another one was out of Ireland. So if we have that kind of situation again, there's virtual solutions now that I think have been embraced more than ever. And it was kind of a nice launching pad to get them all in front of our in front of our partners, and and start to lay out the plans from there, and try not to slow down the music making or releasing process, because we can't tour.
That's awesome, and that's very creative. I think even when we all get to that first live show again, though, we are going to all feel like how much we miss this, how special it is and all of that. And speaking of, going back on the road and touring, obviously I work in a venue, and, one of those things that has accelerated us, at BOK Center has been preparation for when the time is right. And, I think that there's a lot of venues that are IEBA members probably watching right now who would be curious if there going to be a standard, that your artists are going to hold to venues, whether it be a small club or an arena. A lot of the big venues have that kind of leeway a little bit right now to be able to make, technological changes, sanitation advances, things like that, albeit we're working on funding for that. What are some of the things that you guys are going to be looking for when you put your artists out back on the road? What are those assurances maybe? And maybe from a promoter perspective too, Eric, you can tell us, what are the things that you want to get involved in, or what are those best practices? And I know there might not be a clear-cut answer, but what are the discussions, at least maybe with some of those artists that you're having right now?
I'll jump in first on a promoter level. I mean, being that we're doing shows in Orange County, and we've booked a few drive-in shows across the country, every county and state and city is so vastly different from the next, and how they approach COVID, how they're affected by COVID, their death rates, all the stuff. It's so different. Orange County is pretty relaxed. I mean, it's such a different market than the Bay Area of California or Nashville, where you're actually having some venues having shows inside, where that's so far away from happening in Los Angeles. So it's going to be really fascinating to see how each county eases up and what this looks like. But we're just looking at it going, where can we do shows? Where can we get people back? Where can we start to test this? Because really we all still know very little about what this is and how this works, and hopefully we'll figure it out and get back to show business.
Thank you for that. And Eric, I want to stay with you there for a sec. In talking about consumer behavior, right? You guys have been out there promoting shows, out drive-throughs, and really kind of curious as to, what you're seeing as far as, sales go, maybe pandemic aside, but, the economy, really focusing on that in the sense of maybe merchandise sales, food and beverage sales. Are they where you expect them to be? And what can we maybe look forward to as we start to get back into business?
I think when we first started looking at the numbers, on an average show for a drive-in, we charge about $300 to $350 per parking stall for upfront parking. And when I first saw that, I've always kind of leaned towards, being price sensitive and going, how is the fan going to accept this? Or like, that seems crazy to me. Like, would I pay for that? I don't know if I would. But everything that we've put up, and we've done more than a dozen shows now, everything that we've done has sold front to back. Everyone is itching. One of the most fascinating things that I saw early on, I think the first show we did was, we did 3 nights of Andrew McMahon, and his fan base is pretty mellow. It's indie pop. And we were just kind of looking over the crowd, and right in the middle in the upfront parking were 5 Burning Man type fans, like fans that shouldn't be at an Andrew McMahon show. And they had their light sticks and they were juggling, and I was going like, what's going on here? And so we went up to them and we said, are you guys Andrew McMahon fans? And they said, no, we don't know who this is. We just wanted something to do. And they were there with somebody that knew who Andrew was, but we were just kind of blown away that, they all chipped in for front row parking because people are dying to do stuff. People are really itching to go out. We're seeing parents bring their families, we're seeing children, we're seeing all of it. So as far as price resistance, we're not experiencing that. We've had some shows that are like, maybe maybe this specific artist's fans don't feel comfortable going out in the pandemic. And we've certainly had artists that don't feel like they want to play in a pandemic. So it's kind of all across the board. But to answer your question, food sales are there, merch sales are crazy. Andrew McMahon sold, I think, over 5,000 live streams for the live show. It's out there, so people are itching.
Yeah, I could speak to the drive-in opportunities as well. In our space, we've had a lot of success. Instead of doing fields and parking lots of stadiums and things like that, we've been able to do 2 different packages on their own separate tours. And we did a summer leg and a fall leg for each of them. But I think we booked maybe 60 plus drive-in movie theater concerts instead. So traveling very, very light, but the benefit of that and the way like the money works, honestly, is that drive-in movie theaters in middle of nowhere places, very rural communities that you've never heard of these cities, and there's probably no one who actually lives in that town, they already are COVID approved. So the promoter, it's with Awakening Events. They're an amazing nationwide promoter, and it's mostly been in the Southeast and Midwest. And obviously it's our last tour date is tomorrow, I think, or tonight with the weather changing. So that will shift it until next spring, of course. But not having to deal with local ordinances because the venue is already approved. Like it's a drive-in movie theater. They've got the parking spaces. They have a stage to project video onto. They have restrooms already set up. That's worked really, really well for us. And I think the capacities have been good too, since they've already got the little, molehills to prop your car up to see the artist properly. Most of them for us have been anywhere from 200 to 700 capacity, and probably the average ones are around 400. And that way, being able to actually get on the road and do, 15 shows in 2 weekends on weeknights in the summer and just weekends in the fall has been really great to see. But yeah, almost every tour date sold out. Fan demand is there. It's a lot of families for us. Ours are much cheaper than yours, Eric. We do $100 for a car up to 6 people and $175 for the Gold Circle. But with very, very limited production to make it work and waiting for the sun to set, which is pretty hard in the summer when the show can't really start until 8:30, 9 o'clock. And there's a lot of toddlers in attendance. But that's worked really, really well for us. And it's been encouraging to see how the fan engagement has just been in everywhere in middle of nowhere towns, people driving an hour out of their city to see shows again. Fans love it. It's great.
Funnily enough, to the price resistance note, we noticed early on, we have Fits and Tantrums, Skillet, Smith & Myers all on our roster have done some of these drive-ins, and we've noticed on socials, I think that fans had a hurdle to get over of understanding that it was a per car price and not per person, which is so silly to think about. That felt that was pretty obvious, but I think now people have started to understand that, and really that pricing, once you split it down 4 ways, is not that crazy. And I actually was talking to our head of merch the other day. We have a whole artist services team that's doing merch for these things, and they're seeing anywhere between like $27 and $30 a car in merch on top of when they get to the venue. So I think, just to, another point to the price resistance thing, I mean, people really are excited to not only get back out there, but also find, they want to support the artist once they're there as well.
That's awesome. And thank you guys for sharing that perspective. I think it's really helpful as we look forward to, getting back to business and back into our business. And overall, again, I just want to kind of emphasize that our panelists here today were selected because we really felt like we wanted to get the people, in our industry who are getting after it and looking at the future and really driving what's going to bring our industry back. And it's really inspirational to me that you all, share these stories and share how, you're working to get to that point. because obviously we're in a very tough time in our country, and this positivity, this, you know, this outlook that you all have is really, really helpful, especially for those who have been shut down for so long. So thank you for that. We do have time for a quick question which came in, and this can go for anybody on the panel. And the question is, how has communication in the industry changed as a result of the pandemic? And for example, does it feel like some of the colder contacts or cold calls are more or less receptive to meeting, you know, new clients or partners now? I'll ask that and open it up to anybody.
I want to go. I don't know if my colleagues are finding this, but like I'm finding that it's like my traditional communication flow is I call an agent and say, hey, we want to do this show. But with all the changes and everything going on, we're oftentimes not hearing back, or we'll send an offer, but run into a manager and find out that the offer never got delivered. So that part is a little weird, you know? So, you know, I think we're speaking on just personally, I'm speaking to a lot more managers than I normally do. Usually it's, you know, territory agents. But now with all these new exciting small agencies popping up, it's really exciting to kind of like build out the future. It's like, you know, it's a whole fresh perspective on what this is going to look like. So, oh yeah, I have a PTA meeting. This is the fun part of this life. But yeah, I think for me, it's hard just knowing, you know, who to reach out to. Sometimes an email doesn't get answered right away, but people are, you know, raising their kids at home on Zoom all day, and you know, this is the new life. And so just kind of sorting through that and finding out who's still in the mix without, you know, asking hard questions, or hey, does so and so still work here, or who's looking after this band now. But for anyone watching, we're doing drive-in shows. I'm here if you want to reach out.
Yeah, I would say the same, just in terms of communication, that, you know, again, it's about flexibility. You know, so many of us have also taken on a second job of being virtual teachers with our children at the same time as trying to get into those phone calls and video conferences and all of that. And, you know, I do feel like people in general have been a lot more open to where everyone is in terms of their availability. And similarly, I've tried to really open up when I can be available, and then also still, you know, make sure that I'm not just like having phone calls all weekend long. But it's a weird time. You don't know what's going on with folks. There's a lot more, you know, depression. I mean, people are having some hard times right now, and it's, you just, there's just not going to be as much of an immediate response, I think. And I think there's a little bit more understanding that has to go along with that when you don't know what's going on with people's lives, you know, outside of work. But at the same time, I do feel like one thing I've really enjoyed, and I am sure plenty of people say they are not enjoying this, but I really like looking at people. So I really like having all of these video options for talking to people, because I really like meeting people in person. And when you can't do that, you know, I'm usually out on trips, you know, half of the month seeing people in person, and it really helps me do what I do best in terms of networking. And I don't think I could survive this without seeing people's faces. So I really appreciate that. I know that it gets exhausting for sure, but it's been a really nice way to keep connecting with people, even, you know, even when it's kind of second best.
Yeah, I agree. I think catching up with somebody doesn't just mean texting her over the phone anymore. I mean, it literally means let's grab a drink like this. I mean, it's very, very cool. I agree. Annie?
I was just going to say, I think that there's been a silver lining in all of this, that there has been kind of the lowered barrier to entry in terms of, I think we're all in this together. And I think in speaking to all these artists trying to figure out, what works in the live streaming space and how you make money, that pretty much anyone I've spoken to or reached out to is down to get on the phone and talk it through, even if it hasn't been an artist on our label. I'll shout out Randy Nichols after he did the Under Oath streams. I feel like he's probably spoken to everyone about those streams, but has been so willing, and so many managers and agents and promoters have been down to just get on the phone, and you spend the first half of the call just connecting as human beings, because we need to do that. And then, we're not getting that time you get at a show and having a drink together, but, and then just kind of catching up on what we're all seeing. And I think that's been the one bright spot during the work week, of having phone calls like that and catch ups with people in the industry that even I might not necessarily have been, my day-to-day people I need to speak to in order to get those daily, job roles done.
Awesome. Well, I think that's pretty much all we have time for. And again, I just want to thank everybody, our viewers, and of course our panelists. I thought this was a really, really great conversation, and proud to have put it together with our Young Professionals Committee. Just as a reminder, our closing remarks will start at 4 p.m. Central on the main conference page on the IEBA website. So you'll close out this Zoom window here, and we'll see you all there. And lastly, I just want to give a big shout out to Pam, Cole, Claudia, and the rest of the IEBA team for putting this virtual conference together and making this a place for our industry to come together for a couple of days, for a couple of hours on those couple of days. I certainly miss seeing everyone, and can't wait to look forward to getting back to do what we do best in 2021. So thank you all, and that will end it.